The morning started with an unsettling stillness, the kind that makes your skin crawl, like unseen eyes were tracking every move. I was sipping my coffee and scrolling through local news on my tablet when something unusual caught my eye on the security monitor above my fridge. The camera facing my front porch flickered with movement. A woman in a floral blazer and high heels stood at my door, fidgeting with a set of keys. Karen. Yes, that Karen, the self-appointed president of our HOA, who ruled the neighborhood like it was her personal fiefdom. Known for barging into neighbors' homes, criticizing landscaping choices, and filing noise complaints for the faintest sounds after 9 p.m. She had escalated her antics before, but this was a no level of madness. I watched, stunned, as she glanced over her shoulder and carefully slid a key into my front door. Slowly, deliberately, pulse quickened. But I wasn't alone. Just 15 minutes earlier, I'd called the sheriff's office after finding a threatening letter taped to my door. Typed, and signed, but clearly originating from someone in the HOA. Deputy Ramirez was already inside, dusting for fingerprints and reviewing my security footage. Another officer lingered just out of sight in the hallway, quietly observing. We were there to document a crime, not to confront one in progress. As the lock clicked and the door creaked open, Karen stepped in, clutching a clipboard as if on official business. "This is an HOA inspection," she announced, voice sharp and practiced. That's when her eyes met Deputy Ramirez's uniformed presence badge gleaming, hand resting lightly on his belt. Karen froze, her mouth parted, eyes flicking between me, the deputy, and the clipboard trembling in her grasp. "Oh," she stammered. "I didn't realize anyone, ma'am," Ramirez said evenly, cutting her off. "You just entered a private residence without permission. That's breaking and entering." Karen's face drained of color. Her legs wobbled. I stayed silent. Words weren't necessary. Her shock spoke volumes. And then, almost theatrically, Karen dropped the clipboard. Paper spilled onto the hardwood. Floor some HOA bylaws, others property maps with my home marked up in red ink. Deputy Ramirez raised an eyebrow and stepped closer. "Mind explaining this?" Karen opened her mouth, but only a faint hiss of air emerged. She straightened, adjusted an overpriced necklace, and adopted a rehearsed, officious tone. "I was conducting an emergency compliance check," she said, forcing a smile. "Reports of code violations had come in. The HOA has full authority to enter when necessary." "No, ma'am," Ramirez interrupted firmly. "You do not have the authority to enter someone's home, especially not without consent. This isn't a storage unit, it's a private residence, protected under state law." Karen's smile faltered. "Well, technically, the HOA bylaws do say." "I don't care what your little neighborhood club says," Ramirez snapped. "Without a warrant or written permission, walking into a resident's home uninvited is a criminal offense." I stepped forward, gesturing to the scattered papers. "Want to talk about violations? That right there looks like you were planning something." Karen's eyes widened. "It's all a misunderstanding," she said, scooping at the papers. "Nothing shady. I was only here to help." "To help who?" I pressed. She didn't answer. That's when Deputy Harris emerged from the hallway, holding the letter we'd found earlier. "You wouldn't happen to know who wrote this, would you?" he asked, holding it up. Karen blinked. No, I never seen that before in my life." "Funny," Harris said, glancing at another paper in his hand, "because we just matched the font and formatting to an internal HOA email template. And guess whose login it came from?" Karen went silent. Ramirez stepped closer. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to stay here while we contact the HOA board. Depending on what we find, you could face charges for unlawful entry, harassment, and possibly attempted intimidation." Karen's composure crumbled like cheap porcelain. "You don't understand. I was told. I thought I was just doing what needed to be done." "Who told you?" I demanded, crossing my arms. She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the door, and whispered a name I never expected. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," she muttered. "But we heard it clear as day." Bryce Monroe. Ramirez exchanged a sharp look with Harris. I frowned. "Bryce? The HOA's legal advisor." Karen nodded, eyes darting around like she'd just confessed to a crime syndicate. "He said if I conducted a compliance check and found anything even slightly off, the HOA could file for forced repossession. He said I'd be protecting the neighborhood from problem residents. Deputy Ramirez raised a brow. Repossession? That's not even something the HOA can do without court approval. Karen clutched her designer handbag like it was a lifeline. I didn't know. He said it was legal. He said he had a judge in his pocket. I thought I was just helping. You unlocked a man's home, Deputy Harris said flatly. That's not helping. That's criminal trespass. Karen slumped onto my couch like a deflated balloon. The smug queen of the cul-de-sac now looked like a lost substitute teacher. He said I'd get promoted to regional board chair if I proved I could handle you, she muttered. I leaned against the doorway, stunned. This wasn't personal, it was a power play. Karen's gaze lifted. He said you were a threat, that you refused to comply, ignored warnings, filed too many complaints. He said we had to set an example. Deputy Ramirez nodded slowly. Looks like we need to pay Mr. Monroe a visit. Just then, karma or bad timing buzzed my phone. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. A deep, commanding voice barked. Karen, did you do it? Is the property clear? Karen visibly recoiled. Bryce, don't say my name on the phone, idiot. Ramirez gestured for me to mute it. He pulled out a small recording device. I unmuted. I told you to make sure no one was inside. Did you at least take photos? Put the complaint forms in the drawer like I told you. Karen stammered. They were here. There were cops. They heard everything. A long pause. Then the voice snarled, you just made a huge mistake. The line went dead. Deputy Harris looked grim. That was your legal advisor? Sounds like a full conspiracy inside your HOA. Karen's eyes widened, finally realizing she was the fall guy. Ramirez nodded. We'll need to comb through HOA records and digital logs. If Monroe's been manipulating members and forging reports, this is bigger than one illegal entry. I looked at Karen. Hope your fancy blazer comes in orange. 2 hours later, my living room looked like a command center. Laptops open, police radios crackling, investigators going through Karen's clipboard, the threatening letter, and the HOA's public site. Karen had gone from defiant to defeated, sitting quietly in a corner, muttering about trying to impress Bryce. Then came the real twist. Deputy Ramirez placed a USB stick on the table. Recovered deleted files from the HOA cloud server. You're going to want to see this. I double-clicked. A folder titled Special Enforcements opened. Inside were photos not just of my house, but 6 others' notes on non-compliant behavior, suggestions for fake violations, and lists of target homeowners who had pushed back, including a couple who had sued the HOA last year. Each file ended with a signature. Bryce Monroe. Ramirez whistled. He's running a full-blown extortion ring under the guise of community maintenance. Deputy Harris walked in, phone in hand. You won't believe this. That call earlier didn't come from Monroe's house, it came from the HOA office itself. And he's still there. Still there? I asked, confused. Yes. And here's the kicker, he thinks Karen was the only one caught. So we're letting her call him. Karen's eyes widened. Wait, you want me to what? Ramirez smirked. Cooperate, and we can recommend leniency. Otherwise, you go down with him. Karen hesitated, then slowly nodded. They handed her the phone and hit record. She dialed. Bryce, it's me. He answered immediately. You didn't tell them anything, right? I didn't. But I need help. They're asking about the letters, the reports. They found the forms. Destroy them. Burn them. Say you don't know anything. Deny everything. Deputy Ramirez gave a subtle thumbs up. Karen's voice trembled. I think we need a lawyer. I am the lawyer, Bryce snapped. That was it. Harris ended the call and turned to us. Got everything we need. He just admitted to obstruction and witness tampering. We're bringing him in. Within the hour, Monroe was in cuffs, escorted from the HOA offices, while neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Karen wasn't exactly off the hook, but she'd helped expose the largest HOA abuse case our town had ever seen. As for me, I received a formal apology. The HOA board was dismantled, and Karen's emergency key program was permanently banned. Every time I pass that door, I remember her frozen face as she stepped into the trap she set for someone else. Caught red-handed, still trying to play innocent only in my neighborhood. If you enjoyed this insane HOA drama, Hit that like button, it helps expose more stories like this. Comment below, what would you have done if Karen tried to unlock your door? I read every single one. And subscribe, because what happened next makes this look like the calm before the storm.